Let's move on. Caveat to that statement, another big game, Alabama at Auburn. KenPom making this line, Auburn minus 10. Total projection-wise on KenPom, 176. Both teams coming off losses.
Oh boy.
Alabama dropping 2 games in a row. I want to give you credit off the top before we dive into the matchup. You mentioned taking Florida, not only all total for that matchup at Alabama, but taking Florida plus money if you like the Gators versus taking the points, getting a little more value, bang for your buck. Definitely worked in those bettors' favor who listened to that advice. But Alabama dropping 2 straight, Auburn losing to A&M on Tuesday night. Had a big bet on the Aggies. That one came through. No Denver Jones. Auburn coming off of the clinching regular season title win last weekend. Buzz Williams has historically owned Bruce Pearl. That continued.
True.
He was calling out plays from the sideline that Auburn was running. It was fun to watch. Also, long-term, just with me for Auburn really quickly, they did a great job of not only trapping Broome, but making him think fast. That could be something to watch for. Not in this matchup specifically, but come the tournament. What happens when teams do exactly what A&M did, especially defensively sound teams like the Aggies? He had a couple turnovers. Auburn had 15 on the game. Granted, no Denver Jones, but still worth noting for me. Anyways, back to this matchup. Auburn-Alabama. Pissed off Auburn team, pissed off Alabama team. Any angle for you here, Justin?
Give me sorry.
Total?
No. My mouth didn't work. I think it's Alabama.
I
Auburn,
like that.
Yeah, Auburn kind of struggling a little. That Texas A&M game, their worst game of the season per shot quality, their lowest expected win percentage, reeks of complacency. And I don't think that's a bad thing. They've done it. They are the best team in the country. They are the number one. And yeah, going on the road, Texas A&M, the physicality is tough. The stuff we've talked about for a long time here. When I tell you go against A&M, go against A&M, because it doesn't work against everyone. When you can shoot over them, when you can figure it out, when you have other methods, when you can embarrass them in terms of their weaknesses. Well, guess what? It's a college basketball is a big game of rock, paper, scissors, right? And there's sometimes you're just the rock, and sometimes you're the paper, and sometimes you're the scissors, and just depends on your style. And obviously, in terms of Auburn being this rock that no one can handle, and Texas A&M being the paper that I think everyone's the scissors to, it just works, right? And all of a sudden, A&M gets this win and maybe exposes it. But now you have a game against Alabama where Auburn already played them, beat them on the road by 9 points in a game that shot quality expected Alabama to score an additional 20 points, 16 more points on three-pointers. Mark Sears underperformed by 12 points, one of his worst games of the season, Eli. So, reload, take the shot, use the data behind it. Alabama here on the road. It's a tough spot. But, I mean, they have the shooting to do it. I think if they take some notes maybe from what Texas A&M did, again, they've dropped, 4 of their last 6? This is a little bit more of a pissed-off Alabama that now I honestly believe has no recourse for any shot at the 1, is locked into the 2. So I don't know. This is maybe a little bit more for like pride and not wanting the season sweep. And it's tough. I think, is number out here yet, or where are we at with it? There was a number, right?
Yeah, no number. I would guess Auburn gets a little bit of tax on senior day coming off the A&M loss, maybe 10.5, 10. I don't see this being lower than 9.5. That's for sure.
Wow. Okay. We have 8, and we have 8 over at SQ. So that kind of lines up a little bit towards the Alabama. It's kind of what we're feeling. Again, Alabama offense expected to be doing better. Actually, was a little cold in the non-con, shooting a little cold in the mid-range in conference play. And honestly, Broome has been impacting the mid-range a lot. And Auburn's been has been very lucky defending the 3, expected to be allowing conference opponents to shoot 6% better from deep. So is this the game where the cows come home? And that type of 3-point defense that shot quality sees in Auburn gets exposed? Because, again, a 6-point difference in conference is going to change a few things in terms of how you perceive the number of points they allow per possession. And I mean, again, that's what they've done all season, though. Teams shooting 29% from deep against them this season, 28% from deep in conference, expected 34 in both. I don't know. That's not very sustainable. Maybe this is that day. Maybe Alabama finds the stroke coming off of a tough loss. I mean,
on their own senior day,
right? And I love the senior day loss, man, because family's there, emotions are high. It's hard. You don't realize that, like, a lot of these kids, their families don't come out to every single game. It's not exactly easy. You're not close to home. Oftentimes it's not easy for the family to get there, but a senior day, arrangements are made long in advance. Parents are on the floor. I mean, we saw with Alabama, it didn't work. They tried to have their senior day after the game.
That's weird.
And it didn't work. And I think it's not really about, because he's like, I don't want the distraction. It's like, I don't think that's the distraction. I think having the family in town, in the stands, knowing they're there, it's a little bit different for whatever reason. I don't blame these kids. It's their whole lives, their whole careers culminating at this point. Only 4 or 5% go on to play pro ball. Like, it's very much the end of their basketball careers. They have poured the first 20, 15 cognizant years of their lives into, for 80 hours a week, full-time jobs, children in the mines. They love the mines, and they're sad. They're sad they're leaving the mines, and their families are there, and they don't play well on the senior day. And on the opposite side, it's like this let's get them. It's like, all right, let's spoil it. And it works. For whatever reason, it works. It's the one time a year where I don't agree with that extra 1 point home court tax that has become the standard on top of HCA calculations from Ken Pom. Yeah, Alabama making me feel all right. I think if you can get, again, above that 6.5, maybe even that 9.5, we get 9.5 behind Alabama. I like it, because they're going to shoot those threes with 30 seconds left, and they don't care. They're going to do everything they can to make it as close as possible. They don't care. And maybe an over as well. We saw, 30 points in 2 minutes or something to end the Florida game? Jeez.
Ton of fouls to end that matchup. That was
a ton of fouls and a ton of threes, and they'll hit them. And it's just what a concept. Good shooters, finished games, free throws, clock stoppages, and points.
My one concern with this Alabama play just is, do we see a bit of a mirror in terms of the statistical output for Auburn on the offensive glass, like what Florida did? 16 offensive rebounds, out-rebounding Alabama by 15, 50-35. Condon had a huge game, 27-10. Florida shot below 30% from three, which Justin, if you go into that matchup and say Florida's going to shoot below 30%, I would argue you and I both would have had a bet on Alabama in that case. Yeah, they dominated the glass.
Did all of a sudden one of the arms of Alabama's defensive rebounders fall off, apparently? I would have liked to know that too.
It's a good question.
I would have put a bet on Florida if you told me that. So yeah, it's tough. But yeah, I do think this is a spot where Broome could dominate a little bit and corral those offensive rebounds, especially if they're getting to the rim, right? Rebounding is such an art. And, it's a function of shot type as well, because the longer shot more generally creates the longer rebound. The lay-in with the English off the glass isn't going to Kareem 14 feet out beyond the paint, right? It's physics. So you give Broome a better chance to dominate the glass when the ball is going closer to him. So if they're getting to the rack, I expect those misses to get cleaned up at a better chance. But if they're taking jump shots, the box out's a little bit more effective, right? Because it's going to scatter the effectiveness of, keeping him in one position far, even under the basket. You can get your guards rebounding a little bit involved, or your wings especially.
I'll tell you this, if Denver Jones doesn't play, I mean, that you could correlate to why Mark Sears underperformed in a big way. Maybe Alabama was due for a little bit of 3-point variance heading into that first meeting against Auburn. But no Jones, Sears should perform much more efficiently, and I may be with you on the Tide in that case.